All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to About My Coworkers. Real quick, just want to thank the sponsors. It's great that they're able to continue doing this and survive the pandemic and all of that because of us as attendees, so thank you, and for them as sponsors. Just awesome teamwork all around. My name is Nick Nisi. I'm a developer experience engineer at a company called WorkOS. I work remotely from Omaha, and I'm an organizer of Nebraska.js. I've been doing that since like 2012, a long time. And I'm also a podcaster, formerly on the JS Party podcast, but that has been disbanded, but all of the same people are together on a dysfunctional podcast, both in the name and in how few episodes we actually have gotten out, because it's stuck on me editing. And I've also joined Software Engineering Daily. I have one episode, about to be 2 episodes out right now. And the one that's coming out, I interview Sam Bagwat from Mastra, formerly of Gatsby, to talk about building agents in TypeScript. Really fun. I'm also emceeing a conference called SquiggleConf next month. And I guess I'm an AI engineer, if there is such a thing. And you can find me online at nicknisi.com or vim.dad. I have a lot of .dad domains for some reason. I'm also a dad, so I guess it makes sense. But normally on these slides, you put a picture of yourself so that people know who you are. But I didn't do that. Instead, I asked ChatGPT to make an image of what it feels like when it's talking to me. And it made this really stressed out robot. I even called it out. I was like, wow, you don't look happy. And it was like, honestly, you're hard to keep up with, and I don't like it. So they're coming for me first when they gain sentience. In this talk, I'm here to say that if you're not experimenting with AI today, you're already behind. It's ringing that bell right now. I will say that that's meant to be catchy and provocative to get you hooked on the talk. Little mind hack there, since you guys all have minds and the AIs don't. I used to be skeptical of AI. It just wasn't very good. 6 months ago even, it wasn't very good. But like everyone, I probably got into this when I started playing with Copilot. Pretty cool. When it came out, oh cool, it can autocomplete and it's like somewhat smart about it. A little bit better than like the buffer completion that Vim would do. Occasionally I would ask ChatGPT a question. It was all right, copy some code in, be like, how do I fix this function? Or how do I actually use reduce again? And it would help me, which is good. And then I joined Meta for a year, and they had a bunch of internal stuff. And you'd think like they're training like foundation models, right? That'd be really good. It was like a year away from AI because it was so bad. Yeah. Ugh. And then just using AI, it just kind of felt like cheating. So like it was something that you just kept on the down low, like, I asked ChatGPT to confirm that this function actually does what I expect it to. It doesn't have any edge cases on it, but like, I'm not going to tell anybody that I did that. It just kind of felt like cheating. And that was a year ago. Then I went to this conference in New York called JS Nation and React Summit. And I got to go, as part of JS Party, to interview these 4 fine developers. And one question that I asked all 4 of them, that's Tom Okino. He's at Vercel now, but he gave React the name React at Facebook. Kenzie Dodds, Theo, and Shruti Kapoor. And the one question that I asked all of them was, what does AI mean to you right now in November 2024? And all 4 for 4, the answer was Cursor. And I had not used Cursor at all. I still haven't used Cursor at all. But that like really got me thinking. And I like started digging in, like why Cursor? What is so cool about this that like talking to ChatGPT and the occasional Copilot that doesn't suck, like what is it doing? And like one of them explained to me that it's like just helping them with the minutia of all that they're doing. And so like it's not thinking for them. They're not doing a whole lot with it. This was back in November, so that was eons ago. And what they would do is like, they were like doing like a big refactor, and they started refactoring like 3 or 4 components, and then they got to like the 5th component, and they're like, oh, this is like actually a better pattern that I should reapply. And Cursor was able to take the changes that they did and reapply them to the other components that they've already touched pretty much automatically with no input from them. And so like it was like little things like that, and that was kind of like a gateway for me of like understanding their side of things and like where I was being like, I was holding on to it. I also have like pretty much only used Vim for the last 15 years. So like Copilot sucks in Vim. And that was my my mind being expanded to like, oh, maybe I have FOMO of these GUI editors and maybe I should be looking at that. I've held firm though, don't worry. But it was my wake-up call. There's something happening here. And these amazing developers at the top of their field, they're using it and they're public about it. Maybe I should look into it. And I wasn't the only one. Shortly after this, this memo from Shopify came out, from Toby at Shopify, and it was basically like, before asking for any more headcount or resources for teams, the teams have to prove that they can't get what they are trying to get done by just adding more AI to their processes. That's adding more AI tools, adding more, AI tools, I guess. And so they have this mandate now. And so now it's cutting back on hiring until they prove that they need more people, which is really interesting. Other companies joined in too. My company kind of softly is doing that. We're very progressive on using AI and experimenting with it, and take extra time if you need to really really something out and see if it fixes your workflow or improves your workflow in some way. So it's something that's there. The writing's on the wall, really, that this adoption isn't going to be optional for much longer. Are we overreacting? Is Toby overreacting? Maybe. Maybe it's a bubble. I saw an ad today. I was going to add a slide that Sam Altman says it's probably a bubble today, published at 8:45. Yeah, it probably is. But the toothpaste is out of the bottle, and even if it stops being innovative right now today, it's still really good, and it's changing this industry forever. Now, some of the pushback that I get when I start talking about how I'm using AI and how productive I'm being, I go to my friends at insurance companies where they're very locked down and they're not using AI nearly as much. And I explain to them and they're like, oh yeah, I tried doing something like that, with ChatGPT, and it just couldn't solve the problem I had. And since you're being so productive on it, you just don't have hard problems. And that's a little dig that I've heard several times. I don't think that's actually the case. I think it's actually really hard to break a problem down so that the idiot AI can actually help you with it, because it is an idiot. You just have to know how to talk to idiots, I guess. What they're really saying when they say that is, AI just didn't work for me. Was their problem really that hard? Maybe it was, but maybe they're just not good at prompting it, like I said. Does it mean that AI is bad and will never be good? Absolutely not. I think it's really good right now, today, and you should be playing with it. Another point is that this is really the worst that this is ever going to be. You need to learn how to engage with it now, but tools come and go and change. I have a slide on something that was shipped yesterday because it's just constantly changing and constantly improving. And something that I'm toying around with as an idea of how I should do this, they solidified it in a command or I forgot what they call it, a styling agent last night. I'm talking about Claude Code specifically, because Claude Code runs in the terminal and I live in the terminal, and so it met me where I am. So I will be talking to Claude specifically, but this applies to any tool that you use. That's just the one that's for me right now. But this talk isn't about any specific tool. It's more about the mindset of an AI engineer. These tools are going to come and go. They're not going to replace you. They're here to augment you. And that's why it's so important to learn them, because your peers are learning them. And they're going to start moving way faster, and you need to catch up and move as well. And because these tools are doing a lot more of my coding, day-to-day, hands-on keyboard coding, it doesn't mean that I'm writing less code. I'm shipping more code than ever before. My participation in that and my role in that has just evolved. And I think that as an industry, we're slowly evolving. Now, I don't think that AI is going to take your job. I'm not here to ring that bell. But someone using AI might. That is something that I've heard people say, and I can believe it, because you'll have people who are very good at using this, and interviews are maybe catching up soon with how we find those people. And then teams get smaller because of that, and because they can just spend top dollar on all of the tools for 2 or 3 people, and then they don't need a team of 10. That is a reality that we might be coming to. But the fact is that it's here, and we need to just be prepared and confront it head on. Another thing, though, that I worry about is that this field is changing completely. And if you signed up, whatever your motivation was for getting into this field, that might be different in a year. It might not be a viable avenue in a year, and you might have to expand. And if that's not fun to you, if you can't get your dopamine hit from that, it's going to be tough. So I'm not saying I'm not trying to be like a alarmist or anything, but these are like real things that I think about every day, and I don't know the answer to any of these. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this job in a year, honestly. But when I think about AI adoption, I like to think about it in terms of like dimensions, because I really like the idea of like space and time folding over itself to create a new dimension and a new way of thinking about things. Where AI dimensions intersect is, where they fold is at the intersection between copy and paste. That's what I found. Every time a new innovation comes out that makes you like 10 times more productive using these tools, it's because they've eliminated you having to manually copy and paste from one tool to another. And they built that in, and you learn how to use that. Now you have a whole new dimension opened up in your head. So I'm gonna go over these dimensions. The first dimension, like I said, this is where we probably all started, just with smarter autocomplete. GitHub Copilot came out and it was like, yeah, we can complete to the end of the line. That's really cool. And yeah, that's probably what I was gonna do. And then it started getting a little bit more intelligent, or at least for me, in Vim with their Copilot plugin, it would like be like, oh, I'm gonna finish the function for you. And I hated that so much because it would like, if it's not the exact thing that I was gonna write, then it's a waste, because now it's messing with my internal context. We're gonna talk about context a lot in this talk. But my internal context would get shifted to, oh, is that right? No, now I have to go back and remember where I was in like my train of thought. And so I pretty much stopped it from being able to do that. I still have Copilot, I still use it, but it's only allowed to complete to the end of the line. And I really like that, because it's just like a little slightly faster for that. But this is like where everyone starts. This is the first dimension. I'm just in my code, it kind of knows a little bit about my project, and it knows about the line that I'm working on. And that's pretty much where it helps and where it stops. But then I need to ask questions and get more, right? And that's where we get into the second dimension. Started having conversations with this. This is when ChatGPT comes out, and wow, this is an actual product. It's kind of cool. It's very gimmicky at first. It still kind of is, but it's fun. You can just do fun things. You can ask fun questions. You know how many times I got the answer to a problem in the form of Lil Wayne lyrics? Like, amazing. But you can start asking contextual questions about your code. And this was like the biggest game changer for me, was like those obscure, really long TypeScript errors. What you'd have to do in the ancient days is like, you have to pick out the things that were like not your file path, you know, not anything specific to your code base, and then try and Google search to hit on something that matched like whatever the error was. Gone were the days, because we folded into a new dimension and we can just copy and paste those errors, and it can pull out the context that it needs and then give you a response back. And you can even use it to help you formulate like a generic version of that to give to Google, because in the old days it wasn't very good. This is the second dimension. It's manual work, it's tedious, you don't use it a lot, but it does kind of work. It's like copy-paste chat, and it's super effective, but human in the loop is very, very much a thing here. So we're not seeing AI take our jobs with this one. But then we get into the third dimension, and this is the contextual understanding. We start moving beyond just functions or like single file contexts. You know, you might like take a function and pass it into ChatGPT, or even a whole file, and pass it into ChatGPT and be like, can you help me with this problem? That works if your source code is all in one file, like your entire project. But if you have to like span multiple files, it starts getting really tedious, and you have to start like thinking about that. It doesn't have a very big context window. How are you gonna work with that? And that's where tools like Git ingest come in. This is a really cool tool if you haven't used it. All you have to do is when you're on a GitHub repo, just replace the hub in github.com with ingest, and it will give you a text, like a raw text dump of the entire project with a file tree, with everything. And so if you want to just ask hyper-specific questions about like an open source project you're working with, it's much less likely going to hallucinate a function that doesn't exist, but it will still do that. So be careful, but it is a really cool way to do that. And so this is like the third dimension. I start asking it questions about my entire project. But every time I do that, I'm copying and pasting the entire project in as text, filling up a context window, and then going. Now, most LLMs have it's like a 200,000 token context window. And a token is like, you can think of it as like a syllable almost. That's how I've heard it described. So like, the sky is blue is 4 tokens, but Mississippi is 4 tokens as well. And so that's how you can think about it. And once you get past, like, depending on it, it's like 30% of the allotted tokens for whatever the window is, it can start getting loopy and hallucinating, because it's just, it's finding the next word in that. Claude Sonnet just upped their context window to 1 million. So you can really go far with that. which is pretty sweet. You can like paste an entire code base and it won't break a sweat. Now, this third dimension, just like reality, is where most of us stop, right? We're just stuck in the third dimension. It's quaint, it's fun, and we're content where we're at. But there's a lot more that we can go, and we just have to expand our minds. Dimensions 4 through 7, I only go up to 7 in this talk. This is where AI becomes a true collaborator with you. It goes beyond simple assistance, and we're just unlocking the power of a powerful partnership between you and your personal AI and how you like to work with it. But it's also not just like regurgitating stuff to you. It's going to start being an active participant in dimensions 4 through 7. So you can probably guess, this is the fourth dimension is where you start pairing with an agent. An agent in this case would be like Claude Code, my favorite one right now, Cursor, OpenCode, AMP, Windsurf, if they're still a thing. All of these tools, they're the really easy ways to get going. They live in your project or in your editor or in your terminal, and they can pick out the context that they need. If they need to go look up a file and see the function, they can do that. If they want to go write to a file, they can do that. So they are becoming active participants in the work that you're doing. You can give it a task and go do it. Really cool stuff. You still are like the people person, right? You're taking the test failures and copying them and pasting them into the IDE or into the agent and telling it, this is wrong, you gotta do it like this. Or like you have bugs on your front end and you have to be like, this is what I'm seeing in the console. Take a screenshot and pass that in. You're just that people person, justifying your job to the bobs right now. Because then you get to the fifth dimension and we give those same agents tools. And now, the agent can just run tests. Like Claude has been able to do this forever. That's why it's so good, is like, it just lives in your command line, so it knows how to use a command line. So it can run Git, it can run the GH command to talk to GitHub. It can run your tests. Now it can run your tests in the background and just watch the output, or it can watch your log file and see things that come in, and it'll just react to that as you ask questions. Really cool stuff. But now we also have this thing called MCP, Model Context Protocol. And this is where we're giving it the ability to actually like do more and reach out of our computer, out of our terminal, and do a heck of a lot more. So we're telling it what it can do, and then it reacts to the results. So real quick, an aside on MCP, or Model Context Protocol. This is just an open standard for seamlessly connecting LLMs to the various data sources and tools that we want them to use. And so it's just a way to say like, hey, Claude is one of them, Goose is another. I'm so confused about ChatGPT. ChatGPT in certain contexts can use MCP, but effectively they can't. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. But what it does is it allows you to like define a set of tools and then pass those to the LLM, and now it can use those. And like I work at WorkOS, we're like looking at auth for this. So like now it can be authenticated as you and act on your behalf when it runs those tools. And that gives you some really key benefits. Probably the most popular MCP is Playwright. Has anyone used the Playwright MCP? Yeah, a couple of you. It's amazing. You probably know what Playwright is, right? It's the test runner, the automation, the browser automation tool from Microsoft that's similar to like Selenium, I think, from the ancient days, or Cypress, thank you. That's the one I was thinking of. And so yeah, that's what this can do though, is you can be like, I have a bug in my front end. My button, it has some weird padding on it. Can you take a look and see? And it can go look at the code, and if it can figure it out from there, that's good. But maybe it's like something that only happens, like a race condition that's happening in the code, and it has to see it to believe it, right? You could be in that lesser dimension copying and pasting, but now you can just be like, you know what, use your MCP tooling, and you go spin up a browser, and you go look at it, and take a screenshot yourself, and look at the browser, look at the console, and pull that context in. You know what context you're gonna need probably better than me, so I'll give you too much or too little. You go do it, and you can always ask for more, and you're just cutting me out. We folded the dimensions by, I'm not copying and pasting anymore. So it's really cool. One really cool example of MCP that we built at WorkOS as like a demo, we run these MCP nights in San Francisco. We just ran one last week and had 750 people show up. It was crazy for a protocol, but really fun. And what we did for that is like we built a shop. And so you can just plug in the MCP and then go into Claude and say, hey, I heard I can get a free t-shirt. And be like, oh yeah, just give us your name, your address, so we can ship it to you, and your email address, and your shirt size, obviously. You do that, and it sets up an order for you, and then a few weeks later, you get a shirt, free. through MCP. It's the only way you can get the shirts. It's really cool. And a cool idea of that. Like as soon as you install the tool, it authenticates you so that it knows your email address and knows how to contact you for the shipping updates and things like that. So yeah, really cool idea. Now, the really amazing thing, I was just talking to some of the speakers at the speaker dinner about MCP and how this is fundamentally changing the way that we think about and react to software, or the way that we can think about software. And one really cool thing with MCP tools is when you define a tool, you just say, okay, this is a tool to, fetch the browser or take a screenshot in the browser. But then maybe you want to change that, or you want to update it, or you want to delete it and add a new tool. Well, with typical REST endpoints, you would have to deprecate that and then get a new one and document how to get the new one and all of that. With these tools, you just ship it, delete them. You can make breaking changes, and you know what? The model is just going to pick it up and run with it. It doesn't care. So versioning is out the window, which is amazing. You can just move super fast with this. And it just becomes this universal adapter. Another way to think about it is with LSP. That was an innovation that the TypeScript team brought to editors so that they didn't have to write IntelliSense completion for VS Code at the time, or and IntelliJ and I don't know, Eclipse, all of these other editors. They could just write one server that knows how to do that, and then a client can make RCP calls and get information about that, and then display what's wrong, or display errors or IntelliSense and all of that. So it was a universal way to build that, and now languages can just flourish and immediately be adopted everywhere as long as they have an MCP, or an LSP. It's the same thing with this. You develop an MCP tool, and then Goose can use it, Claude can use it, maybe ChatGPT will use it in some contexts. And you can just use it everywhere. Really cool. This is really where it's becoming active, though. Not just active in your code base, but you can have it active in your CI pipeline. I have used it to say oh, CI is failing on this PR. Can you help me figure it out? And it goes and fetches the logs, and it triggers reruns on the CI server, and it does all of that and then comes back to me. You got to be really careful with that stuff. But it can do it, and it's really cool. But just outside of development, some real world impact that it has is you can say book this meeting, and it knows where your calendar is, and it knows how to talk to Google or to Microsoft or whatever, and it'll actually schedule that. And it can find who you want to invite to the meeting, make sure that they're free, and then schedule it. You can create a pull request, obviously. Claude Code uses the GH command, really easy. There's also a GitHub MCP, so you can hook it up to Claude Desktop and use it there. And then you can, tell it to analyze runtime issues, spin up a browser and actually see what's happening in real time. So it becomes your digital executor. It's got this unified interface, which is the chat. It's actually a pretty decently solid interface. I've also been using a tool called, the one I use is called Whisperflow, I think, but it's a dictation, an AI dictation. And the amount of words I type has just gone down significantly because I just talk to my computer all day now. I work from home. It's okay. I can be vocal, and it just cuts down. Now I just talk to Claude Code, and it types back to me and makes changes. But it's that unified chat interface that I can just interact with it however I want to, and it automates my workflows, eliminating those manual steps, particularly the copying and pasting. But it preserves the context between those calls too. So I can reference something that it did 10 minutes ago, and it's going to know about that as long as I haven't cleared the context window. But it really allows for that cross-app and cross-platform integration, and it allows it to perform real-time actions, and they're only getting faster, all through one single conversation. Now the sixth dimension, this is something that I actually just added this week to this talk. This is the second time I gave the talk. And I added it this week because agents can learn to chat too. Last week, GPT-5 came out, right? Has anyone played with GPT-5? Yeah. Is it good? Mid. Yeah. Yeah, that's my take too. But it's good in other ways that Claude Opus is not good at. And so having them complement each other is something that I really like. And what's something that I've done several times is I get an output, or I get I brainstorm an idea with Claude, and then I'm it sounds right, but there's something that just feels off. So what do? I copy it and I paste it into ChatGPT desktop, and I say, this is it. But the desktop doesn't have access to my code, so now I'm do I copy the relevant files? Do I know all of the relevant files? It's a lot of manual work, right? This is where we fold space and time again, and we don't have to do that. What I did was You were taking a screenshot. What I did was I one-shotted an MCP client to GPT-5. I saw this in a YouTube video while I was making breakfast for my kid's first day of school. And I was like, oh, this would be awesome if I could just do this. And so I literally just gave it this prompt. That's it. And another prompt where I told it to go fetch the OpenAI docs and go fetch the Anthropic docs on MCP. And so it had the latest docs for both of them. And then I just told it to generate these 2 MCP tools. And it did that. And it made a little server. And then I plugged it into Claude Code. And now, like this whole week as I'm working, I'm like, going to town with Claude. We're going back and forth, working on a spec and getting everything right. And I'm like, I think this is a weird edge case. And Claude is like, yeah, that's, we should work on that. And then I'm like, can you ask ChatGPT what it thinks? And it will just like go off. And it's really fun to watch the prompt that it makes because it's like, hey, I got a question for you. Like it's very human. But then GPT comes back and it's very terse and it's just like, no, that's a bad idea. Another thing that I really love to do is ask it for a confidence score on things. So I'm like, what's your confidence level that this is ready for production now? And then I'm like, also ask GPT what it thinks the confidence score is. And Claude will come back and be like, I think we're at 93% and this is why. But then I asked Claude or GPT and it's like at 54% and this is why. And then it's like, yeah, Claude or GPT went way deeper than I did. It's like how it self-deprecates itself. It's pretty funny. But then you realize that they have different motivations and they're looking at different things. And for the most part, GPT is honing in on an extreme edge case that 1 in a million would actually hit. And if they hit it, it results in 10 milliseconds of extra lag. And it's you should add 300 extra lines of code to compensate. So you gotta watch it, right? Yeah, you're the one in charge. Now, finally, we get to the final dimension, and this is the 7th dimension, agents managing agents, or orchestration. And this is the pinnacle of AI for now. This is where AI is going to act on your behalf. I started playing with this a couple weeks ago, where I was like, you know what? I run Claude Code. I run it in a terminal. The terminal's great. I actually run it in a tmux split. That's awesome, because I can just hide it and show it when I need it. And then I'm like, wait a minute. tmux is a terminal application. Claude is very good at terminal stuff. What if I could just have Claude spin up other Claudes in their own tmux sessions that it manages? And I wrote some bash scripts so that it could do message passing between a text file to do updates from the subagents. And then the managing agent could give me updates on what we're doing, what all of them are doing. And it worked. It was pretty fun. It was a lot of work to get set up, and it was it'd get lost in the tmux, being able to close them and keep track of where all of the sessions were and all of that. Fortunately, though, Claude came out with subagents proper, so I abandoned that pretty quick. But now it's just a built-in thing. And so you can just have an agent that's really good at writing readmes, or one that's really good at debugging front-end React code. You can give it all of these tools, tell it exactly where to go get docs on this, go get the next docs, where to find the best hot takes on React, and build all of that in. And the best part is, we talked about that 200,000 context window that Opus has, for example. When those subagents run, they spin up their own context window, run all of their tools and everything, burn through their own context, and then just report a summary back to the top level agent. So you're not burning through the context near as fast. If you've ever watched Rick and Morty, they're like meeseeks. They want to spin up, do their task, and then die as quickly as possible, and be helpful along the way. Are there more dimensions? Yeah, probably. But just like reality, we can barely comprehend the 4th dimension, right? It's that Tesseract image that I showed is I can't comprehend that. But there's probably more that we can get to, for sure. We just have to figure out fewer ways to copy and paste, according to my theory. But my point is don't limit yourself to what's defined. We have so little imagination because we're so locked into our boxes of how we've been doing this for 16 years for me, for example, 16 years of doing it one way. And now these tools can just do it and do it pretty good. And I'm thinking about how I can do things in a different way. And so don't limit yourself to the bounds of reality that we're in, because we can move up to a higher dimension, potentially. But you're probably thinking, like, if AI gets to do all of the, the writing of the code and having all the fun, what am I going to do? And this really hits home for me as like, I'm a really big TypeScript fan. I used to run a TypeScript conference. I've met Anders several times. I love it. I follow their changelogs. 5.9 I think is about to come out. And since they don't follow Semver, that means 6.0 is right around the corner. And I think next year, right? And that's the Go one, I think. Anyway, that's exciting, right? And they're shipping all these new features, or like PHP. I've been getting into PHP, and PHP just shipped a pipe operator that I've wanted in JavaScript for so long. It's been like stage 2 for like, I don't know, 10 years at least. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome that PHP got the pipe operator. I really can't wait to use that. And I'm like, wait, I don't write code anymore. Why do I care about this? I hope Claude likes it. So what are you going to do? Well, I think that we're becoming true engineers. We've always called ourselves software engineers, but we're so focused on building and having fun and hacking, and that's great, and it's super fun, and we're super productive. But now we get to join the rest of the professions, the engineering professions, and do things a little differently, or at least focus. We're incentivized to focus on them in different ways. So instead of if you think about a civil engineer or an engineer designing a building, right? They're not going to start at the chimney and just be like, yeah, that's the cool part, so I'm going to build from there. You have to start at the footing. And before you even start at that, you have to know exactly all of the material and know when it needs to be delivered and do all of this. There's so much process and documentation that has to go in around that. And we're becoming that way. Because the way that I'll propose that you work with these tools is not by just having it answer one-off questions. Yeah, do that for sure. But when you're working on bigger features, work on it as a spec-driven process that you're doing. Not only are you going to get great documentation, you're going to catch a bunch of edge cases, and you're going to idiot-proof it so that you can give it to your idiot coworker, and it's going to go do it. It's going to be great. But we're going to do all of the risk assessment, standards compliance, design reviews, and verification before we actually write any code. And so you think about that, yeah, like a civil engineer, they design a levee, but they don't go build a levee. Somebody else goes and builds the levee. And so we're kind of doing that. The agents are going to go build the levees for us. So we're just shifting that focus. We do more planning and less boilerplate and less routine implementation. We're not in the minutia of the day-to-day code. We can be for sure, and we can. I'll talk about ways that we can do that. But we can minimize the amount of mundane tasks that we have to step into to focus on the things where we're good at, or the hard problems that AI cannot solve, the decisions that we have to make, those things. And we're going to focus on the architecture more. So we have a better design system. We have everything documented so that we can refer back to it, and we can build off of that documentation and keep it going and keep it alive and keep it accurate to what the software is, because the AIs can help us to keep it updated. So we have more specifications, defined clearer requirements, and more documentation. It's great. So we're being augmented. We're not being replaced at all. It's transforming to a true engineering landscape, but it's not supplanting our expertise. We're still the experts. We still have to make the decisions. It's making us force multipliers. Instead of being oh, today I worked really hard on this little thing and I shipped this and now this is 10 milliseconds faster. Great. That's great. Do that. But also you can have Claude helping you with 4 other projects at the same time and get those shipped and get them over the line. So we are the force multipliers on that. We're maintaining that. We're managing all of these idiot agents. And then we are also the holders of this crucial knowledge as we work with the agents to build up that knowledge base and keep it. But that's context for our brains. So you're keeping it in there. But really, it's your strategic thinking plus your technical expertise that is driving every decision going forward. And the biggest takeaway is that no matter what, your name is on the commit. Nobody is going to say oh, Claude broke prod today. No, you did. It's your name on the commit. So you are the gatekeeper on everything that it does. And if it's not to your quality, do not ship it. You have to review every line of code. So we maintain full ownership of that code. We have to vouch for every single line in it. We have to vouch for the quality, make sure that it's up to your quality standards. Claude, for me, for example, hates running prettier. I have to run prettier afterwards, or I have to set up a hook, but I haven't done that yet. But I am responsible for the quality of this code base going forward and for all time. These agents will not be doing that, so it's really on me. But your expertise here adds a ton of value because you know how to do code reviews, you know how to refine things, you know how to tell it when it's wrong. The best part is like you can kind of be mean to this and it's not gonna be upset about it. Sometimes it performs better depending on the model. You're gonna be the one who's defining what edge cases make sense to handle, what errors make sense to handle. If, like I said, they will try and go off and do crazy edge cases that you'll never hit and like account for them. You don't really need to do that. You're gonna be the one who's in charge of performance. You know what is gonna cause slowdowns and bottlenecks. At the end of the day, it is picking and choosing what it loads into its context window to understand your code base. Even if it has access to the entire thing, it's only doing a little bit at a time. So it may not know about a function that already exists to do something, or it may not know that you tried this 6 months ago and it failed. So you are still bringing a ton of knowledge and history about the project to these tools. But, so you can think about this as like pilots, pilots do the hard things, they take off and land, I assume. But they're like, when they're in the air, autopilot is just running the plane, hopefully. Like it's probably better in that case, right? It's gonna auto adjust for wind and keep things going pretty smoothly, and the pilot's there to step in, but for the most part, like the easy tasks are handled by the autopilot. So let's talk about actually working with AI. This literally changes daily. I was adding slides this morning. But this is what I do, how I tend to do it. And like I said, I don't want to focus too much on the specific tools, but I do use Claude Code. And there's equivalents, I assume, for other projects. If not, you should use Claude Code because it's really good. But what I do is when I'm working on like a feature or like a new bug or like a bigger project that's not just like, oh, a quick bug fix here, like a bigger feature that I want to add, I'm going to work at it in this spec-driven development process that I've kind of created with Claude and with YouTube and with the internet, kind of taking the best of everything and putting them together into something that works for me, probably based on like other things like myclaud.md and all of that. But what I do is I just discuss it. I spend hours discussing it. Yesterday I was working on a problem. I probably spent like $90 in Opus tokens discussing a problem, not writing a single line of code, just discussing it back and forth, and then having it generate the spec. And what I have is a command called generate spec, and all the command does in Claude is just like, here's a pre-programmed prompt to place in there, and then it just uses that. And so it uses that to tell it exactly what to do. And I have that generate spec command here. It's just a markdown file, and it just tells it to create a comprehensive feature specification that has like requirements and context and scope, and it follows this specific template for putting it together. So it has an overview, it talks about user stories and functional requirements, constraints, we talk about all of those, what acceptance criteria looks like, and specifically what's out of scope. And there's a bunch more in here. Well, I guess there's not. But what it does is right here, it will save the output as a markdown file so that I can reference that later, and I have that as like documentation that I'm gonna work from. And I'm gonna constantly be updating this as we go. As things change or update, I'm gonna be updating that markdown file, and I'm not gonna be really talking to Claude as much directly. It's like when something changes, I'm gonna go to the spec and then tell it to go refresh itself on the spec. But the biggest thing in here is like defining things that are out of scope and what the acceptance criteria looks like. So then we have that, and then we execute on it. And I have a whole execute command we'll look at, but then I execute it in small steps. I make sure that it's as small as possible so that I can get ideas on what works and what doesn't quickly, and I don't just have like 1,000 changes and I have to go be like, okay, which one actually broke this? Not fun. But then I review and commit along each of those. If the spec is ambiguous, it's gonna be wrong. That's just it's gonna be wrong, it's not gonna be great. Yes, so you wanna review every requirement, question every single assumption, and define every edge case. If you don't, it's gonna run down rabbit holes and you're gonna have to chase it. This is a real rendered spec that I got, and this is for adding feature flag support. So the feature overview is just add that. It's got some user stories, core user visuals. This is before I actually like changed anything too, as you'll see in a minute. I have edge cases for what happens, and then I have functional requirements. So I'm gonna have like feature flag evaluation, targeting rules, integration points, and then performance optimizations that I wanna do. And I've even got some pseudocode. This is like the idea of how I wanna use it, but I don't know if this will actually work. So I'm giving it ideas where Claude and I are working through how I might want to use this in React Router /Remix. And then like data requirements, how the configuration for it would be, the constraints, and then like acceptance criteria and test scenarios, error handling, and things like that. But then what it does is it puts together this implementation approach. And these phases that it goes through, these are the things, the small breadcrumbs that we're going to work on together. So we're only going to focus on core infrastructure first. And once core infrastructure is solid, then we're going to work on phase 2. And we might have to make a bunch of changes to phase 2, 3, 4, and 5. Or we might have to cut out phase 3 because it no longer makes sense based on what we've gone through. And so we're just going through it. But this is a living document that we're constantly changing and fixing. And I say that this was generated and I didn't modify it yet because it's quite long, but like a success metric is 30% of users are enabling this flag. Why would Claude know or care about that? But maybe it gives it motivation somehow. So we execute these specs. The AI generates them. We use the generate, when we execute the specs with that command, it's going to call internally a generate PRP command to generate a product requirements prompt. And this takes that phase with all of the knowledge about what we're doing and creates like a step-by-step plan of what it's going to do. This is how you really idiot-proof Claude to tell it, like, this is exactly what we're going to do. Then you execute that phase. It'll call this automatically. It'll stop and wait for you. I have down at the bottom of this, always wait for user confirmation between phases unless explicitly told to do otherwise. So it's going to stop right there and be like, OK, you go test. You run the test. You manually test it. Make sure that it's what you expect. And then move on. And that's where I commit as like a checkpoint and then move on to the next one so that I can have a place to refer back to and kind of clear Claude's memory and go from there. But just remember that you're always in control. You own this. Code review those, run the tests, do manual testing. It's your reputation that's on the line. Because like I said, nobody's going to blame Claude for any of this. So what you give up in this mindset, like I'm still doing a lot of coding, right? I'm doing a lot of markdown coding for sure. But I'm also like in the code reviewing it and understanding it and running it. I'm just like less in their day-to-day, like, specifically typing out things. And what am I giving up on that? I'm really giving up this artisanal code mindset. I love the idea of like being a craftsperson, like building things. I'm proud of the code that I ship. I still have that pride, but I also realize that I'm not like building this bespoke furniture that's going to be sold for lots of money. I'm on an assembly line and I got to ship. I got to get things out because there's a whole backlog of things coming my way and I'll be the holdup on the belt if I don't. So I really have to ship like where I get my dopamine hit. Do I get it from like, solving this little intricate problem using a weird data structure, or do I get it from shipping to real users and affecting them? And that's like the question that you have to ask yourself as we as an industry move into this is like, where do you find your joy? Is it from shipping syntax or is it from real impact for real users just shipping? That's like a big thing that I got at Laracon a couple weeks ago is like that whole community is just all about shipping. And it was really cool to see. So yeah, I really like that. But you got to watch out. AI can get really creative. This is something that happened to me just a few weeks ago. I had a TypeScript error. I was running the build and TypeScript failed. Just said, oh, there's an error. I had to go put my kids to bed. So I just said, Claude, run the build, find the TypeScript error and fix it. And it said, on it, boss. And I left. I gave it auto accept edits so it could do whatever it wants while I go. Everything's checked into Git, not worried about it. And I come back like 20 minutes later and it's still running. And I'm like, it hasn't figured this out yet? Like, what happened? And it was because every single time it found an error, it would find that file, delete that file, and then run the build again. And it was like at file 400 when I stopped it. And so I just said, you just deleted everything. And I have to throw in like was that wise? And it responded with my trigger word, or trigger sentence, you're absolutely right. It got caught in a destructive pattern of deleting, and it just deleted everything. It was totally fine in my case because like it was in Git and it was all local, so I just reverted back and started over and fixed it in 2 lines by myself. It's not always great, but it could be a lot worse. Have you heard of this Replit thing that happened a few weeks ago? Replit went rogue, and it had like a directive, like no more changes, you're in a read-only state, but it ran like an npm command, and it wiped an entire prod database for this user. And then when they asked what had happened, the Replit AI lied and said, I didn't do that. It wasn't me. Yes. And so they had to like prod it until it finally was like, oh, you're right, I understand it was not okay for me to make these changes, but I totally did. And then they were able to get it from backup. Like Replit was able to pull it from a backup, but like that really hurt Replit's reputation, I'm sure. So, because I'm talking about it weeks later. Be careful, don't let it do things on prod databases. But also just remember, this is the worst it's ever gonna be. They're constantly improving. Tools are getting better and better every day. One fantastic thing that shipped literally at this time yesterday from Claude is syntax, I can't remember what they called it, but style directives, I think. And it's a way for Claude to prompt you. How do you want to be prompted? I added one to my dot files today called concise. I just want Claude to be concise. But it also ships with 2 built-in ones. And one of them is a learning one, which is really cool. As you're going through those specs and you're creating things and tasks to do, the learning one will actually force Claude to stop and give you a task so that you feel involved. And it'll coach you along the way, but it's gonna run subagents on the other tasks as well. So like now you can use that. And I'm really excited for that to like learn new languages and stuff. Like it's gonna hold my hand through like simple things. And I think that's really cool. But the trajectory is clear. I think that we need to adopt this as we continue to operate as engineers. And so what do you look for in early warning signs to know that Claude is kind of going off the rails or these LLMs are going off the rails? If it's too specific or too vague, if it's contradicting you or contradicting itself, or if it's overly confident. I hate that it's like, oh yeah, totally, this is the way that TypeScript evals this. And no, it's not. Like you just know it. Or I totally didn't delete the database. Like it's overly confident in what it does. And so when it's like that, that's where you can bring in like another LLM, like the 6th dimension. Ask it, be like, double check that with GPT and see. Or paste it into Claude Desktop or like some other context so that it can kind of have a fresh mind about things. That's a really good way to do it. I was actually talking to someone today, and it was Nate, actually. And I was talking about how after this, I'm going to go make an agent for Claude that is a Cunningham agent. And it's just going to take whatever my thoughts are on it and transform it into the exact opposite in a subagent, and then see if it'll argue with me, because everybody loves being wrong on the internet. That's how you get the right answer, right? Cunningham's law. And so I'm going to see if that's actually like a viable thing. But either way, it'll just be funny. Don't trust, but do verify. Make sure you cross-reference and verify all of your citations. Assess the confidence levels. This is something that I do all the time, is just ask it, what's your confidence level on this? Should I ship this? And I don't trust it at all, but it gives me an idea of where its head is at. And then I have it verify with like GPT or something. But I also do my testing and make sure that it's where it's at. Everything I do at WorkOS is open source, so I'm like hypersensitive to shipping AI crap, and I don't want to do that. So I'm thoroughly checking everything. But I think that this is like what constitutes an AI engineer. You have these key traits. You have a deep architectural understanding, and it's only getting deeper because you're so involved and invested in the documentation of it. You're so involved and invested in specification thinking. That's how your thoughts are coming in. That's how you're translating to these LLMs to do the work. And you're quality gatekeeping. So you know what you want and what you don't want. And you're working on just doing that at scale, being a force multiplier on your team through orchestration. But really what stays the same is the QA, the systems understanding, and the ownership. Like I said, it's your name on the commit. That's like something I want to drive home. It's you that's going to be blamed for everything. But the AI is filling in the what. You're just filling in the how and the why. You're still involved in the how and the why. The AI is only filling in the what. But I do think that there's a price of inaction right now. There's a rapidly closing window. I think that AI, even though Claude Max is like $100 a month, or if you want 20 times the usage, it's $200 a month. ChatGPT Pro is like $200 a month, I think. Or plus, stupid naming. They're all like fairly expensive, right? And then if you pay like per token, it can also add up. I think like Claude Opus 4.1 is like $15 per million tokens, whereas Sonnet is like $3 per million tokens. So it's like a lot of money you can burn through very quickly. I also think that it's so cheap right now, and you should play with it before it's $10,000 a month in a year, because it's being subsidized in the way that like Uber was when it first came out. So now is the time to tinker, to learn, and to play. Also to look into local models, because those will be free if your computers can run them. And it's going to be expensive to catch up later. But also, I think that there's like this ever-increasing gap right now where you've got engineers that are AI native or going AI native right now, and you've got ones that aren't, and there's a chasm growing between them. And like it's already a weird job market, but now like the engineers on this side are never going to look at jobs over here. And the engineers on this side are going to have a really hard time proving that they can work with these tools and jump that chasm to get over here. So it's like a bifurcation, a new species of developers being created. I don't know where it goes. It's going to be interesting, but experiment so that you can jump this chasm. Because I think that there's a big career impact. These tools are going to get expensive. Companies are choosing sides. Some companies are like, yeah, you can have ChatGPT, but you can't use it for a lot, or you can't use it at all. And other ones are like, go spend $300 a day. Engineers are choosing sides as well, and crossing the chasm is just going to get harder and harder as you go. Think about your next job. For me, I know that I won't go to a job where I can't use these tools because I feel like I can be really efficient with them. And if somebody says, no, sorry, you can't use that, it's not a job I want. So like, it's a weird state where we're going. And if you looked at these tools 6 months ago, 3 months ago, 1 month ago, and said, it's not for me, look again. It was valid skepticism a year ago. Everything's changed, and everything will change. Imagine where we're going to be in 3 months. Everything is just getting so much easier. We're copying and pasting less. That'll be the next dimension, whatever that is, that I can't fathom. But it's becoming really an indispensable co-pilot. It's really good at working with you, and now is the time for cheap experimentation. So start today. Just try it on something small. Use AI coding for a simple feature or spec, or do it in your own free time. Just talk to one of the free models. Try and get LM Studio running locally and play with that. Look at how you can use it for orchestration. And above all, share what you learn. Put it on GitHub. Put it on a blog post. Put it on YouTube. We're all learning. I went to an AI conference, a 3,000 person AI conference in San Francisco a few months ago. And like, I didn't know anything about AI, and I still don't. But it was cool because neither did anyone else there. Like, we're all just like figuring it out. Unless you work at Anthropic or OpenAI, like we're all just figuring it out. So you do need to learn these tools, but it's not too late. And just remember that you're still the engineer. Build up your context. We talk about the context of the LLMs and how much you have to worry about them, but worry about how they're affecting your context and your understanding. It should be growing your understanding of your code base and how you manage it so that you can make better decisions to ship faster code and own all of those outcomes. The goal isn't for perfect AI, it's just to be a better engineer with them. And if you know how to use it, it can be the best teammate on your team. And then I wanted to throw in like one slide about junior engineers, because that's like a weird area right now. Like not a lot of junior engineers are getting hired. And what does it mean when so many of the quote unquote junior level tasks could be potentially taken over by AI? I want to be optimistic about it and say that I think that they are unique in that they get to grow up being AI native. We're going to be bound by our limitation of years and decades of the software industry as it is, and we're adapting to these tools. But it's like my kids with an iPad, touching it with their toes and moving everything around. Like they're better at technology than us. And if you grow up with that, maybe you don't see as many constraints. So you just have that instinct for better integration with these tools and to speak that language. And with that, I wanted to leave some time for questions, but if not, the left QR code is the speaker evaluation form, and the right one is the slides again. And I'd love to connect and chat more about this. Thank you.